Well, as I welcome you once again to the program, today's edition is e-governance and its virtues. And our guests are set on Zoom, and let me quickly introduce them as we begin the conversation. First is Henry Cobblah from Ghana. Henry Cobblah is the Chief Executive Officer and Project Lead at iSolve Africa, which is an African innovative technology solution that leverages technology to drive sustainable development, enhance economic opportunities, and improve the quality of life for people across the sub-region and the African continent at large. Plus, Madi Jobarteh is from Gambia. Madi Jobarteh is a civil society activist and again the executive director with Edward Francis Sumo Center for Rights and Justice. We have Marcus Bangura from Sierra Leone. He is the executive director and Citizens Forum for Democratic Accountability, C4D. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
Right. So let me begin with you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Marcus. Let me begin with you, Henry Cobblah, since you are an IT expert. Now, share with us the whole concept of e-governance and how has it impacted countries so far?
Thank you very much, Chris. So, Chris, I think that in the very recent time, we've had governments really focus on integration of IT systems into governance. Relatively, we've seen it cut across different fields. I recently had seen how the Parliament of Ghana had integrations of IT into the Parliament of Ghana, and how it's gracefully integrates into even as simple things as sharing of documents, even on the floor of Parliament for parliamentarians. Now, this cuts across, in general terms, for governance and then for government to be able to make the effective use of IT in all forms and in all different points. Just to say that even the government of Ghana, as I'm more previewed to it, had even set up NITA to be able to have the whole integration of even as simple things as emailing systems for government officials. Now, e-governance systems really is just more about the relationship of the integration of online tools, the sources for employers to be able to maintain communications between governments and then its own companies, and also diplomatic connections across board. And I think that it's a way to go because it makes governance quite easy and possibly better off in being efficient in terms of everything. Now, it cuts across, like I keep mentioning, various forms, even as point as social media. When the government of Ghana recently had changed government, you had seen that even the communication department of the government had just been using social media to be communicating to citizens. It's ministerial appointment, which was quite an easy and cost less effective point for the government in terms of its communication, rather than to be holding several press conferences to be announcing these points. Again, it goes as deep into as how do governments manage economic resources across board and its fiscal effectiveness using technology. And so as simple things as, say, Ghana being able to come up together with the Bank of Ghana to releasing an ECD to be able to manage the physical points for the country and to be able to guard its currency against inflation and another point becomes one of the very critical tools of e-governance in its perspective to how the government relates to its citizens here. And so for me, it's not just about as simple things as IT, but it goes so deep into it. I've seen governments across now even looking into how they could use blockchain technologies and cryptocurrencies as well to be able to push in governance with relation to different fields as good as agriculture, as good as different fields all across board. And so it's a very good concept in terms of a government taking hold of technology, being able to make and use the tools across different sectors in terms of their governance around.
As you rightly said, the Ghanaian government is actually adopting technology in many of its government agencies, even in parliament, among others. But let me bring in the man from the Gambia, in the person of Mr. Madi Jobarteh. At this point, we're looking at the gradual advance. But I mean, first of all, share with us what is the situation of e-governance adaptation like in the Gambia from where you sit.
Thank you. E-governance is has been announced. An intention has been announced by the Gambia government, and in fact, efforts or initiatives put in place, for e-governance. But its practice and its reach remains limited. Its use remains severely limited. For a long time, though, there is what they call the IFMIS, the Integrated Financial Management Information System, at the Ministry of Finance, which oversees or through which certain payments transactions can be conducted. But this is not widespread to all government institutions and agencies. But then, apart from that, e-governance is hugely limited in the way public institutions utilize or digitalize their functions, their services, their engagement, and so on. Last year, or maybe a few years ago, a Ministry for Digital Economy, Communications and Digital Economy has been set up purposely to promote e-governance. Previously, this ministry was contained in the Ministry of Information and Information Communication, agency or ministry, which has done practically very little to nothing. So that today, when you look at a basic thing like websites for government institutions, many have, most don't have, many have, but many also don't fully update. So that today, at the level of the office of the president or at the office of the speaker, government institutions, you realize people still use their personal emails, for example. So, for many transactions that could have been done online are not happening, or, they're always erratic. I mean, because there's always a complaint that the server is down or internet connectivity, because e-governance also relies absolutely on internet connectivity. So challenges are there, which we can talk about later. But then I would say to a large extent, by and large, e-governance is very limited in the Gambia as it is now.
Right. So, Mr. Madi from Gambia, e-governance is limited in his country. Let me cross all the way to Sierra Leone and talk to Mr. Marcus Bangura. Mr. Marcus is the Executive Director with Citizens Forum for Democratic Accountability. So, welcome to the program once again, and share with us what is the state of e-governance adaptation like in Sierra Leone.
Well, good governance, e-governance in Sierra Leone is moving in the sense that the government has taken good governance or e-governance, to be very, very important. And there are certain institutions in the country that are well rooted in e-governance. For example, we talk about the establishment of the Science and Technology Institution that was established, which collect data and a huge lot of other things. But as a matter of fact, it is not as how we can see it, in the sense that it is not as wide as if we can see it in other countries, because it is mostly in strategic areas of governance. That is to say, like the NRA, that is a National Revenue Authority, is one institution that has been playing very, very important role in the aspect of the registration of certain institutions, especially businesses. It plays a very important role in that area. But looking at other aspects, for example, like Parliament and other areas, it is not deep-rooted, as a matter of fact. It is not really deep-rooted. But the fact is, we hold the view that e-governance can contribute immensely to accountability and transparency. looking at Sierra Leone as a country that has got itself deeply involved in issues of corruption, having e-governance in our administrative system, especially in the area of service delivery, it will help greatly to minimize corruption. It will help, in fact, to fast track certain issues and avoid bureaucracy. So far, so good. It is not as rooted as one may think. But what is important is the fact that it is now playing a kind of role that will leave footprint on the sand of history. Yeah.
Very well. So it means that it's a gradual. Yes, I can hear you very well. So it means that it's a gradual process happening in Sierra Leone.
Yeah, I want to say that although when the government took over when the president took over the reins of government in 2018, it showed a deep-rooted interest in e-governance. And as I said, some institutions have started actually pushing for it. But I want to categorically say that Sierra Leone is a little late in e-governance. It is not as widespread as everyone can think or as it is in other countries. It is not really widespread because it has to do, because one of the challenges that we faced in Sierra Leone, right, is the aspect of internet connection and the issue of digital illiteracy. These are two big challenges that we faced in the country. So as a result of that, one will not say that it is a new process. It has not been new, but it has not been fast-tracked or put widespread. So, for example, we have the national digital transformation, a system by which there is a need for integration of taxation, so that at least we can get to the point of transformation. But so far, so good. It is like that. It is not deeply rooted. But a long journey starts with the first step. And I want to believe in a gradual process because there is the mentality already, there is the understanding that e-governance is important. And if we give our all and focus on it, then government invest in it, then I want to believe we'll get to a higher height.
Right. So thank you very much, Mr. Marcus. Now, with the gradual advancement, as you rightly said, one of the challenges in Sierra Leone is digital illiteracy. With the gradual advancement of education on the continent and on the sub-region at large, how does the e-governance idea, or has the e-governance idea come to stay? And has it also, as I'll ask this to Henry, because he is in Ghana and an IT expert, and from his submission, it seems Ghana has actually taken the lead in e-governance, where lots of government agencies have been digitalized to fast track service delivery, efficient service delivery to citizens. With the idea of gradual advancement of education, are we really reaping the benefits of e-governance in Ghana?
Chris, do I have to take it down?
It's okay.
Okay. All right. So I think that one of the things I usually speak to Ghana because that's where I've been. Even though I've had different experiences in different countries like South Africa and Kenya and all, I think that the government of the day here in Ghana really has putting in a lot more when it comes down to education, enough to even at the basic point allow people to understand how technology definitely works and how technology connects to the government of the day. And so I have seen how even teachers as low as that level have been given laptops to be able to learn and understand certain things. I've seen quite a number of implementations that coming, even from the Parliament House of Ghana, where they've been streaming almost every proceedings of late, so that the people of Ghana get to have a lot more of education directly from the policies that are enacted and are shown to the citizens. Now, I should be quick to say that when it comes down to e-governance, it's more about the technology being able to be providing government services, again, to also be giving up information as an information exchange, again, communication transactions as well, and then having direct integrations with different standalone systems, which now comes in generally from government to government, government to citizens, government to businesses, government to employers as well, and then to be able to connect across to diplomats or different countries. And so education comes in for us as a huge point. I think that we're still lagging in terms of how the education flow is going. I can give a typical example of, say, the ECD and how it's not being communicated across to lots of citizens. I've seen how mobile money, when it started, had been pushed, and how the entity that had pushed it, especially with MTN, had pushed in a lot of education. And so you can understand the widespread of the use of that here in Ghana. And so I'm connecting that same with government. I've seen that quite a number of effort is being done, but it's not really adequate, especially when we have the technologies available to us. I expect that we do a lot of leapfrogging from our end. I have not seen government do a lot more with government to business communication and transactions. I've seen the e-portal that had been pushed, but again, I've not seen quite a lot of people having good education to be able to even pay their taxes through that portal. I have seen it being connected to the passport office. I've not seen quite a number of people utilizing it to relatively be able to book their passport or to request for passport. And so there's quite a number of education that has to go out to the citizens, to businesses, even to partners in the business of government. And I think that education would come in strongly if we'll have to do a bit of leapfrogging. We're having AI coming in all over. It's just a talk for me. I have not seen a lot of education in how we can enhance the use of AI in our e-governance systems. I have not seen how AI is being integrated into our tax regimes to be able to understand and know how people are going to understand their own tax points. Businesses are going to understand when they need to sort of file taxes and all of that. I mean, all of these are at our use. We should be able to, number one, make use of the technology and leapfrog, because the technology is available. It is not like we are now developing some of these technologies. AI, blockchain, machine learning, all of these things are sort of available to us. And then even to the citizens, much of the education on being able to even utilize the little efforts that have been made by government to push e-governance or connect through to us by e-governance systems should be pushed in. So for me, I think education comes in strongly. We've not made too much effort in it, but I don't think that we're actually terrible at it as we speak now.
Right. Let me move to Gambia, and then let's focus the conversation on governance. Henry, you are focused on much more of economics and finance and how the advancement of technology by government agencies and the education bit of it ought to be intensified so that people can take advantage of that. But let's focus on governance from the Gambia, where indeed Mr. Madi alludes to the fact that adaptation of e-governance is a step behind and not that advanced yet. How is governance like? Is technology able to ensure transparency and accountability in governance in the context of Gambia?
Say that last part again, please.
I'm asking that, is technology able to ensure accountability and transparency in the course of governance in Gambia?
I would say no. Even though it is to say that, as I said, initiatives have been put in place or policies thought of, but then you realize that a lot of government transactions, documentation, decision making are not, digitalized, so that as a result, the necessary transparency that should obtain is lacking. So currently, as I'm sitting here, I am, trying to get a contract document that the Gambia Ports Authority signed with a Turkish company to take over Banjul Port. And they've taken over Banjul Port by February 14. Now, since October 2024, our organization submitted a request for information using the Access to Information Act to request for that document, contract document. The ports refused to give it, saying that by the contract, they are not obliged to do so until January 2025, when they will display it on their website. Now, it's now February, 19th February today. It is not in their website. And information about this port takeover concession is so limited. It's just one line just to say Banjul Port, concession, that's all. So meaning, if you depended on the technology, in this case, you realize that you cannot get the information that you require. And, this port concession, the information that is there is that they are taking over Banjul Port, but also they are going to build another port, along the coast about 40 kilometers from Banjul. But then what about the rights of workers, and many other issues that citizens need to know. So as it is with this port, you realize that it is the case for many other public institutions where information is not made available on their websites, or, so that at the end of the day, you just find it difficult to sit at home and get information from your laptop. So where that is the case, then it means accountability is inevitably undermined, because there cannot be accountability without transparency. So what is happening, therefore, is technology is not promoting transparency and accountability in the Gambia as it should, simply because the government, whilst in one sense they speak about the need for technology, the need for ICT, the importance of these things, and even create institutions for that, but at the same time, what needs to be put in place, they don't do so. So at the end of the day, therefore, technology is not serving the cause of transparency and accountability. Therefore, governance as a whole in the Gambia as it is. So if I needed a passport, to apply for a passport, or many other government services, maybe a meter for water in my house, or if I needed to pay a tax, let's say rates at the local level to the local council, these are all not digitalized. So I'll have to walk directly to the institution, to the office, to make physical presence and pay. But at the same time, the decisions that they make, let's say if you want to get court decisions now, you go to the judiciary, you realize that you are not going to get up-to-date information online about court judgments, for example, or the management of court cases in terms of the progress of court cases. All right. If you go to the National Assembly, you want to find out the state of bills and acts that and so on. You realize that you may get something, but it may be as late as 2022, or 2021 or 2020. So that even there, you are not getting, the information that you need. The Minister of Finance, if I want to know the state of the budget right now, budget execution, you realize that the reports are, delayed, and not all the reports that you would require to have. So, and where these are the issues, you realize, therefore, transparency in terms of citizens accessing information is problematic. And that limits, therefore, the process of accountability, because citizens, journalists, civil society, actors, and other stakeholders need this information to act upon it in order to hold public institutions accountable. So that has been the challenge in the Gambia, so far.
Can it be improved? Can we have a resolution to enhance the adaptation of technology in the Gambia to facilitate all of these issues that we've talked about for transparency's sake?
I think Yeah, certainly it can be improved. I mean, it is something that is doable. But the first ingredient step for this to happen is political will at the highest level, so that you would have to have the president, the cabinet, the parliament committed to good governance, and realizing that in ensuring good governance, all right, the foundation for that is transparency and accountability. And the primary driver for that transparency and accountability is the use of technology. All right. So that you practically transfer government, on technology, so that not only transparency and accountability, but when you enhance good e-governance, you have the political will to enhance good governance. It means you are going to enhance service delivery.
Right.
You are going to enhance the performance of institutions. You are going to generate popular participation. All right. And, so in every aspect, e-governance touches every aspect. So that if really the political will is there, which is the critical issue, it is something that can be done, so that e-governance can even reduce cost of things, because there are a lot of things you need. If you can just get it online and transact it there, it means it prevents you from paying, even if it is transportation, to move from point A to point B to get to what you want to get. So it is doable. I think the skills are here, the resources are there, the institutions have been created. Now, what is lacking is the commitment to put those policies and laws and institutions, into action for them to perform. Now, that is what is not happening, and I guess because the will is not there, because of corruption, because of public officials not wanting to open the space for citizens to participate, so that they would be put into under scrutiny, and they don't want to be put under scrutiny because they want to preserve the self-enrichment and self-interest that they are pursuing through public office. So for me, that is the bottom line.
Right.
Yeah.
Let me get to Sierra Leone, where Mr. Marcus Bangura is on standby for a conversation once again. In the context of Sierra Leone, share with us, how is the adaptation of e-governance principles facilitating democracy and its well-being to improving citizens' life?
Yeah, as I mentioned initially, that e-governance is in Sierra Leone, but it is not widespread. And as a result of that, when we talk in terms of democracy or governance, it will be a little difficult to see. But there are areas, apart from, because when you talk about governance in general, it's not only limited to governments, but there are agencies as well, and there is the private sector as well. When you talk about e-governance and areas or certain entities that are been using e-governance, one specific institution is that of the National Revenue Authority. Here we see how people pay taxes online. People pay tax online. That is to say, if you have the know-how to do it. And also we have seen wherein university admissions or applications are being done online, especially in major universities like Fabi College, the Mitimagai Technical University, among others. We've seen how businesses have also been registered through online digital platforms. Then again, even payment of taxes sometimes are being done through online. Then also, even land management or land registration, it is also done in that perspective. But it is for us to see it being carried on in the area of governance, that is to say, the issue of democracy in Sierra Leone, because although one will not turn blind eyes and deaf ear to the move by the government of Sierra Leone to ensure that there is promotion of e-governance in this country. That is why they established the DSTI when the president came to power in 2018, around 2019, out of the desire to ensure that we, Sierra Leone, take the road on digital platforms. They introduced the DSTI, and the DSTI has to do with data collection. And because of prior to that period, it was very difficult for us to have data being displayed, on the net. But through this DSTI, we've seen how the government has gone to a very large extent in ensuring that data collections and other things are being carried on. And quite recently, World Bank supported the Ministry of Education, that is under the free quality education, for the introduction of tablets. They call it one tab per school scheme. And that one tab per school scheme has to do with the fact that Sierra Leone has fought very hard to ensure that they get rid of ghost teachers. But this fight has been going on for some time, for quite too long, but it has not been successful. So as a result of that, they decided to come with this one tab per school platform, so as to enable teachers to attend promptly, because every school will be given one tab, about 600 schools, if not merely every school, but about 600 schools will have the privilege of having a tab in their school, wherein teachers are expected to sign in. Although it has not been well written because the process is going on. But I think that is very good in the right direction. Having said that, and as I mentioned initially, that using this digital platform can be challenging, as a matter of fact, because of the issue that a lot of people have little or no knowledge when it comes to digital, the use of digital applications. So as a result of that, it will be very, very challenging. But as somebody mentioned, I think from the Gambia, it has to do with the political will of the government to ensure that it redouble its efforts, stand tall, and do thorough investment in that area, and also target individuals or society for them to actually understand what these digital applications are all about, because it will help the country to move fast, because of the bureaucracies. We know that the civil service is most times characterized with bureaucracy. Sometimes you want to go there, you run your business quickly, it will be very difficult because of bureaucracy. But in this situation, I think if at all government embrace, e-governance, it will enable the country to actually move faster than it is. Because you have your programs, like when you talk in terms of registration, right? Registration of businesses. You can sit at home, you do your registration. For example, when you want to register your organization, we have the institution that is responsible for that. You don't have to go, except if you want to go there, but you can do it. So, as I mentioned initially, that a long journey starts with the first step. But there is that intention, of the government of Sierra Leone to put it into play. But all that should not be seen in the open to satisfy the international community, yes, that we are actually engaged in e-governance, but for we to see it to be done, engage individuals, engage people in schools. We have schools. Sometimes they say, even in universities, they say that you will offer computer. But at the end of the day, the teachers will not go there, or perhaps the applications are not provided, or say the equipment are not provided, which is very, very difficult. So the target should be that of literacy in the area of the use of digital equipment. Okay. If we fail to do so, it will be very difficult. It will be very challenging. So that is why the government and the people of Sierra Leone should put all hands on deck to ensure that the use of digital applications are put into play for the good of the country.
Okay, let me still stay with you, Mr. Marcus, because there is a concern that, look, the advancement of technology has rather fast track or advance the rate at which corruption do occur in various government agencies and institutions as well. How can this technology be managed so that, or the advancement of digitization be managed so that corruption would not be eaten so deep into the fiber of or the fabric of society, while we aim at enhancing or building a good future for the next generation?
Yeah, for us to build the future, there is a need for us to take good governance, generally, not merely e-governance, good governance into consideration, because there are certain principles. Once these principles are put into play, and the government, for example, the issue of transparency and accountability, which is very, very, very important if we are to actually succeed. I used to say that if we focus on accountability, wherein public officials are held into account for certain things being done. But there is a serious problem in this part of the world. People don't like to be questioned about responsibility. Once an amount has been allocated to them, they find it very difficult, to come back and report. And the whole issue of accountability, say democratic accountability, for example, is for an individual who has been giving, or an institution who have been giving certain amounts of money to implement a particular project. At the end of the project, they should come back and ensure that the reports. But looking at Sierra Leone and the aspects of corruption, corruption for some time and for quite too long has eaten the fabric of our society. And as a result of that, if we get e-governance, if we use e-governance properly, right, say for registration and transparency, in the sense that whatever they do should be made known to the public. Because if it is online, there is the possibility for every individual to know about what is going on. And in that situation, there are those individuals, stakeholders, who might be using finances for certain projects they will get fear, to continue to do certain things that is corrupt. So looking at that aspect, there is the need for e-governance. E-governance is very important, but there are a lot of challenges, and these challenges must be affected. If we turn blind eyes and deaf ears to that, the possibility will be very difficult. Then the future, will not be seen as we anticipated it to be.
Right.
Because just individuals in their little corners will divert state resources for their own personal use. We've seen that many years ago. It is still happening. I know it is not only limited to Sierra Leone itself. It is common in most African countries.
Okay.
But e-governance, I think, it will be very, very helpful.
Okay, let me pose the same question to you, Henry Cobblah. You are an IT expert, and we still want to find out, how is it possible that with the advancement of technology and digitization, still people beat the system, that technology and some ill activities continue to happen? We can cite the example of the recent NSX scandal, the National Service Scheme scandal in Ghana, among other scandals in Ghana, which people at the back of digitization and technology and e-governance are just breaking or stealing from the system. How is this happening? Because you're an IT expert, share with us, how is this happening and how can it all be solved?
Thank you very much. So one of the things that you have to realize is that technology is not always foolproof. And again, one of the things about technology is also about the policies that guard it as well. There are quite a number of ways where we can actually safeguard some of these things. And so when we do not have those safeguards around, you're going to have people always using and getting around the system. Always getting around the system. So the thing about it is this. So I should say that number one, data compliance as well. When it comes down to data compliance, you're looking at how. Just a minute. Yeah. So sorry about that. So when it comes down to data compliance, that how are we getting around data compliance? How are we getting around cybersecurity? How are we even getting around to be able to now let some of these applications go through first in its place? I think that even the procurement processes to be able to get some of these systems get into government should actually go through some number of policy reviews, some number of test reviews before they get to be used. I don't think that we've ever had any of these looks into some of these softwares that are thrown onto us. I mean, the last regime of government had so many softwares thrown into several sectors, and there were no such point to say that there were experts that were looking into these softwares. There were independent bodies doing audits into these softwares to see and know even where the data is sitting, and even the use, who could get into it, what are the file permissions people could get in, what kind of servers are we even using for these systems, what are the cybersecurity risks that these systems get to pose to the citizenry and then the users of these systems. I think that that's one of the things that we should be looking into and promoting as, say, independent bodies in the IT firms, and then also in policy points. People could always get into systems. It's very simple. I don't think that it would take so much for anybody to get into an NS system just by pushing in their login, changing points. It always can come around. There are humans that are always getting into some of these things. But again, we could also now look at the willingness, like I'd heard in the conversation, the willingness of government to be able to invest into these infrastructures. When you're putting in machine learning, or AI into systems, you can definitely be able to detect that same person has been put into the system 280 times. You do not need a human intervention to be there, but it comes in with some level of investment. I've realized that quite a number of institutions I've had to deal with do not always realize that IT is expensive. It is very expensive to actually get in the infrastructure of IT, but it does the work for you and it saves you so much, rather than to be lackadaisical about it, try and get a very mediocre system in place, and then you'll be losing so much money. I was listening to the conversation on the NSS as an example, which you had given, and they had requested for 70 million instead of 220 million, which was being disbursed in the old administration. That amount is huge. Now, that amount could have, over the period, over 8 years, you can understand that kind of corrupt act that has actually been going on using the system. So again, people think that IT systems are supposed to just be systems that are just working, but they don't realize that they're supposed to help us be efficient. They're supposed to help us save money, save time and efforts as well, and then also to be able to get it to be easy for the citizenry to be able to use. And so for me, yes, there's some level of technological advancement. It expands in that. But the question would be, have we made that infrastructure availability? Have we invested into those infrastructures to be able to make sure that they're giving us the best? What are the audit points of it? What are the policy and procedure points of it? What are the procurement initiations whenever we're getting some of these companies to come in? I mean, IT contracts have been outthrown everywhere, and are given to people just based on favor and not based on even the experience in running some of these systems. I've seen financial payment systems being integrated into several e-governance systems, and we do not even know about them, only because somebody in government understands that payment goes through this. They create a payment system, and then now they go through some sourcing payments payment procedure, and then are given the contract, and then payment goes through their payment systems, and it's not known. Whilst there are people that are tried and tested, they are in the system, they've had to open up their systems, they are well known, they are private entities who are employing well-meaning citizens and could be integrated and even grown, but it's only just given out based on who you know and understanding that this amount of money could go to a particular payment system, and then a politician or somebody of high influence will now get a contract to be able to do that integration. I mean, those are the flaws that we're seeing in there. So I believe that, number one, we need a proper national technology policy, rightly so, for probably the next 10 years, because technology changes that quickly. And so you cannot enact policies and procedures that are going to go beyond probably 10 years. But if we have in the 10 years, what do we want to do? How do we sync most of our systems together? How do we get the national ID system sync into the national service system, such that whoever is in that system is verified by a national ID automatically, and is not just on the system just by means of upload of some Excel sheet into the system for payment to go on. And so I believe that, number one, policy has a role to play in there. Number two, the procurement services and even the fronters and the directors of some of these sectors in the government institution have roles to play in making sure that we enact the proper systems. I mean, I can understand, say, with the national service issue, if we're having almost about the amount which was originally quoted in this current administration as 70 million, as against the 220 million, we can understand that kind of savings that can come in for the government, that kind of savings that can even be funding that could be pushed into the national service scheme to even raise the salaries of some of these people that are on the field, and to even encourage them to work harder, rather than it's being some level of flawed amounts that are going to individuals in their pockets. So policy has a good role to play in. Directors of companies belonging to the government have roles to play. Policy makers have roles to play. We in the private sectors have a national duty to contribute to these policy guidelines and understanding to these technological advancements to be able to get these systems right and in place. The regulators also have a very good role to play. I have not seen the active participation of, say, the privacy policy and then authority. I've seen the cybersecurity authority do some level of activity, but they are not too loud for us. I think that they should be pushing in a lot of effort, because they are the regulators, and they should be pushing in a lot of sanctions or prosecutions to make sure that some of these do not have to be independent investigations by people before they sort of have to act.
Very well. So, I mean, so the whole issue of cybersecurity really matters here, and then putting in proper infrastructure to protect data input, even in the whole IT system, is very critical. But let me turn attention to Gambia, where you host your election come next year, 2026. You just held your Independence Day on Tuesday, February 18. 60 years down the line, and we ask the question of e-governance, and you say that it is lacking in the Gambia. But going forward into election 2026, we know that previously Gambia, your means of election is to use the marbles for your election, for your electoral processes. Going into 2026 election, how is technology going to be adopted in your electoral process? If you can share with us.
Yeah, Gambian election is very analog, very manual until now. Voting is by ballot tokens that are like small, marbles that you drop into a hole in a ballot drum. So it's a very simple and very, in terms of elections today, very archaic. There is intention now. I think the decision has been made to use ballot papers. But then in the elections, the digitalization, one would say, began in the 2021 voter registration, where voters register, through a biometric system. But which is good because it has the potential to ensure there are no double registration, or mistakes in names, because that also happens, and so on. Apart from that, in the counting of votes, the system here insists that the Electoral Commission should be the one to announce the results. Not much of technology is used, in the announcement or in the counting of votes, because votes are counted, with the marbles in a very manual way. So
How is that even possible? How do you do that across? Across the entire Gambia, and then people have to vote using marbles, put in the hole and counting. Could you take us through that process, just for education?
Yeah. So it's a metal drum, like a bucket metal drum. So it has a nozzle pointing upwards, and which has a hole. So you just take a marble and drop it in the hole, so it drops into the drum. In those days, bicycles have a bell, on the steering wheel, so that's sort of like that, so that when the marble drops, it hits the bell, and then you hear a ting sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so the electoral officer who sits just outside of the polling booth would hear that the marble has been dropped, signaling that this person has voted.
But
Yeah, so
voted for which candidate? Is it able to actually indicate a particular candidate that I have voted for, since democracy allows for multi participation?
Yeah, so the drums are put in a polling booth, which is covered. So if there are 3 candidates, 4 candidates, 5 candidates, each would have his or her own drum, with your picture or logo, party logo picture on the drum. So if I enter the booth, I'm gonna see 5 drums, and each drum, with the picture, and symbol logo of the party or the candidate, so that I know this is the candidate I'm going to vote for. All right, so that you vote accordingly. And so the counting, all of the 5, ballot dropping out, and they will be counted one. So how to count it? There is a sieve. All right, some sort of a board, holes of 100, 200, holes on it, so that the marbles are placed. So if the board is filled, this is a 200, whole board. So it has 200. You count that way until we get to each candidate, so that one would have 1,000 votes, 2,000 votes, 500 votes, that is how it is done. So it's a very direct and a very simple and a very crude way. If anything good about it is its foolproof nature to manipulate, because it's pretty much very, very, very direct.
Interesting.
So if it is public, it will be difficult to. But then there has been calls that to change, like the rest of the world, using ballot papers, and even further digitalize it. Can people vote electronically? So there has been debate about it, because whilst more ballot papers may appear modern, and electronic voting may even be more modern, but the point is, people have raised concerns with the ballot papers. The incidence of void votes, because folks, it may require some amount of literacy or so, and some amount of attention, as opposed to just the marbles. So people may make mistakes, and that could rise to a higher number. If you look at the current system, ineligible votes are very, very limited. Because it does happen. Some people, instead of putting the marble inside the hole of the drum, they just place the marble on top of the drum. So that would be considered invalid vote.
Okay.
Or just drop it on the ground or something. But that is very, very rare. Yeah. So the argument is, if you bring the ballot papers, it will look modern, of course, but then would there be mistakes? People not, ticking the right place or ticking in a way that it falls in between. I mean, so those things have been said. Of course, with the electronic voting, folks are like, the systems here are not good for many reasons, even electricity. But that has not been spoken about now. Actually, I think the move is towards a ballot paper. Hopefully 2026, we may see the use of ballot papers for the first time.
Okay, well, very well noted. Well, gentlemen, we will be bringing the conversation to a close very soon. But before we go, I just want to give each and every one a minute to make your very final submission on e-governance and its challenges together with its virtues as well. Let me begin with Sierra Leone, where Mr. Marcus is around to actually bring us up to speed. Mr. Marcus, in the context of Sierra Leone going forward, what are the things that we ought to improve to enhance e-governance, and what are some of the challenges that ought to be, or some of the bottlenecks that ought to be addressed head on for the good of the Sierra Leonean people? In some 1 minute, please.
Yeah, in general perspective, e-governance is good, and the government has that intention to ensure that good governance is e-governance is being used all over to enable service delivery for every Sierra Leonean, and every information of government to be put online so that people will understand. We have knowledge about it. However, there are a lot of challenges. One of the challenges is the internet. The internet is a very serious challenge. As I speak to you, we are faced with so much problems with the internet. That is one aspect, and also the area of literacy, right, in digital use or in computer. There is a need for government to double its efforts, stand tall, and ensure that computer literacy become, a magnet of attention for every Sierra Leonean to imbibe. Those ideals of e-governance should be imbibed. Once that is done, it will be good. But all depends on the political will of government, the readiness of government to ensure that these things are put into play. Because if we talk about corruption and we want to get rid of corruption, there is a need for transparency and accountability. E-governance can help us greatly to ensure that although certain times some people can beat the system, however, it can enable those good citizens to do their work or their things so easily without facing the challenge of bureaucracy as the civil service is caught in that web. So as a result of that, e-governance, I want to say, is important, and Sierra Leoneans should endeavor to imbibe it. Even if government doesn't come to you, you should have that desire to ensure that you know what e-governance is all about, and you know the applications so that you can do your things easily. Service delivery is very important. It is in service delivery that we've seen corruption to the highest peak. But with e-governance, I want to believe all informations should be put on the net for us to know. By so doing, it can limit the activities of certain individuals to divert what is for the state for their own personal use. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Marcus from Sierra Leone. Let me turn to Ghana, where Henry Cobblah is on standby. Henry, as we conclude, what are some of the things or some of the takeaways that we need to take away with e-governance and its virtues?
Thank you very much. So, like I'd already mentioned, when it comes down to e-governance, you're looking at government services being provided through electronic or IT systems. You're looking at it being able to hit citizens, being able to hit businesses, being able to hit other governments, and also being able to hit employers as well. Now, in that regard, we're looking at how effective some of these systems can be set up, number one, and how best they could definitely be available to the citizenry. Now, we're also looking at how possible that these systems do not cause harm to the economic infrastructure of government as well, and also do not also hurt individuals as well. So for me, it's more about how these systems are sort of initiated, how these systems are brought to book, how we get to effectively use these systems, what are the investments that we're looking into making into these infrastructures, and then how we put together policies that are going to be able to guide this use of these systems. For me, we could look at how governments could put together proper technology policies and infrastructures, and again, policy books to be able to run these systems and get the best out of them.
Right. Thank you very much, Henry Cobblah. Let me conclude in the Gambia and takeaways, some challenges that ought to be addressed head on in the context of e-governance and its virtues. Mr. Marcus.
Chris, I think what we have to conclude with is to say that our countries have been independent for at least 60 years. Gambia just had its 60th anniversary yesterday. And, there is no shortage of expertise, of resources, of anything you can imagine, tools to make sure governance works. But what has to be recognized is that over these past 60 years, our governments have been notorious for corruption, for inefficiency, for incompetence, for waste of resources, for abuse of human rights, to the point that the vast majority of West Africans live in poverty and deprivation, and the insecurity. We can see the impact of all of that, the irregular migration, the insecurity, and now with the effects of climate change and everything else. So that at this point, I think we have to demand that there is better governance in West Africa, far better governance in West Africa. There's absolutely no excuse why, governance and development are at the level that they are at, in this region. This region is well endowed by any, standards to create a society of freedom, of shared prosperity, which was our theme yesterday, and peace in this region. Now, one of the ways to make that happen effectively, efficiently, and effectively is through e-governance. And, so for me, like Marcus have highlighted, political will. The leadership in this region, in our individual countries, have to demonstrate that political will to serve their people. And no better way to serve their people than to, give every attention, give every, space and support to the creation of effective, widespread e-governance across the board. If really they mean to generate development in this, in these countries in the region, to maintain peace, to create shared prosperity for all, I think e-governance is what needs to be done, because lack of it is costing us immensely. Our countries are losing resources because of lack of e-governance, because of lack of transparency and accountability.
Right.
Public institutions are not performing as they should, and so on and so forth. So for me, my last take really is the time is long overdue, and the only obstacle to it, or e-governance, is the lack of political will, and we should demand it.
Right. So the last obstacle to e-governance is the lack of political will, and we ought to demand it. These are the very last words of the Gambian Civil Society activist and executive director of Edward Francis Small Center for Right and Justice, Madi Jobarteh. Well, this is the match we can take on this edition of the debates of citizens on WADR West Africa Democracy Radio. The topic has been e-governance and its virtues. Our guest, Henry Cobblah from Ghana, the Chief Executive Officer and Project Lead for iSolve Africa, an African innovative technology solution that leverages on technology to drive sustainable development, enhance economic opportunities, and improve the quality of lives for African people. And Madi Jobarteh from Gambia, civil society activist and executive director, Edward Francis Small Center for Right and Justice, and Marcus Bangura from Sierra Leone, who is the executive director for Citizens Forum for Democratic Accountability, C4D. He is also a media practitioner in Sierra Leone as well. So we come your way same time next week with another topical issue of democratic concern. This is where we wrap things up on Citizens Hour on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM, Dakar, Senegal. You can find this particular broadcast on our website, wadr.org, and on all of our streaming platforms on Facebook at WADR English Service, as well as YouTube at WADR News. We would love to hear from you, so send us an email to wadr@wadr.org. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to our listeners from our partner radio stations, Voice of Liberia FM 104.1 in Monrovia, and Kwateke Radio 100.9 FM Bon County, Liberia and Ghana. We're live on Radio Part Savannah Region, Royals FM Wenchi, and Focus FM Kumasi, as well as Radio Adan in the Greater Accra region. We also say thank you to our listeners on Arbaka Radio 97.5 FM Bauchi and Darlin FM 107.3 Owerri, Southeastern Nigeria, and on Young African Voices 101.6 FM Freetown, and Radio Buff 91.3 FM, Mao 91 in Sierra Leone, and Hilltop Radio in the Gambia. Join us next week for another edition. I am Christopher Atitso. Thank you for your time.